The little voice in the junkyard. The sun was low on the red horizon of Vorta 6, an old mining moon filled with dust, rusted scrap, and forgotten machines. Mark Dalen, a human mechanic, stood near a broken hauler ship. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and tossed his tool into the toolbox with a tired sigh. He had come here looking for spare parts. Quiet, cheap, and far from the crowded trade routes. That's what he liked. But that day was not quiet. Human. Are you single? Mark froze. He turned around slowly. There, standing in the middle of the junkyard, was a small alien girl. Her eyes were large and bright violet. Her clothes were dirty and torn. She held a broken toy in her hand, a wooden creature missing its legs. Mark blinked. What did you say? The girl stepped closer. Are you single? She asked again, more serious this time. Mark scratched his head, unsure if he was hearing right. Yeah, I guess. Why? She didn't smile. My mom is really kind. You have to marry her. He laughed nervously. That's a strange thing to say, but the girl didn't laugh. Behind her, shadows moved. Mark looked past her and saw tall alien guards scanning the area. They wore black armor and carried stun spears. They were looking for something, or someone, or maybe someone running. Mark looked back at the girl. Her hands were shaking, her eyes were wet. You're in trouble, aren't you? He asked gently. The girl nodded. They want to take my mom away, and me too. Why? Because we have no male left. No one to protect us. Mark knelt down beside her. Where is your mother now? The girl looked around, then grabbed his hand and pulled him through a tight path between stacked metal parts. They passed broken droids, old ship wings, and rusted engines. Finally, they reached a quiet corner behind an old cargo loader. A small cave had been dug into a pile of scrap. Inside, lying on a blanket made of old coats, was the girl's mother. She was tall and beautiful, even though she looked tired and hurt. Her skin had a soft silver glow. Her left leg was wrapped in dirty cloth. One of her arms was badly bruised. She looked up weakly. Who is this? She whispered. A human, the girl said proudly. I told him to marry you. The woman's eyes widened. You did what? Mark raised his hands. It's okay. I didn't say yes. I just followed her because, well, she looked scared. The woman sighed and tried to sit up, wincing in pain. I'm sorry, human. My daughter is young. She doesn't understand how dangerous this is. Dangerous? The woman nodded. In our culture, if a male saves the life of a child, he must take in the family as a protector, as a husband. Many males leave when they hear that. Mark looked at the girl. She smiled up at him, her eyes full of hope. You don't have to love her, she said softly. Just keep us safe. Mark's chest tightened. He didn't come here to get involved. He was just a mechanic. A quiet man, alone by choice. But now, two lives were staring at him with fear and hope. I don't even know your names, E.T. said. The woman spoke. My name is Zira. My daughter is Lena. He nodded slowly. I'm Mark Dalen. Zira tried to stand but winced again. Mark moved to help her, but she pulled back. I'm fine. No, you're not, he said. You need real medical help. We can't go to a clinic. The guards will find us. Mark looked outside. The shadows were getting longer. The patrols would sweep the area soon. If they found Zira and Lena, they'd be taken, or worse. He sighed. You can come with me. I have a ship. It's not much, but it's safe. Zira looked at him with disbelief. Why would you do that? Mark looked at Lena. Because your daughter asked me to. Zira's lips trembled. She turned her face away, ashamed, maybe even afraid. You know what this means, right? She whispered. If we go with you, by law we become yours. That's how our world sees it. Mark looked at both of them. Then he nodded once. I understand. And for the first time, Lena smiled. A full, honest smile. "You'll like her," the little girl said softly. "She cooks well, and she sings when she thinks no one's listening." Mark didn't answer. He just picked up the broken toy and fixed the leg with a small tool from his belt. Then he said quietly, "Let's go, before it's too late." And so, the human mechanic walked into a future he never expected, led there by the little voice in the junkyard. Mark led them carefully through the dark alleys of the junkyard, staying low and silent as shadows of guards passed overhead. The silver-skinned woman leaned on his arm, limping badly with each step, her daughter clinging to her other side. They moved like ghosts through the maze of scrap, slipping past rusted droid heads and broken antenna towers until they reached Mark's ship. The vessel wasn't much, an old freighter called the Wayfinder, but it was clean, functional, and best of all, quiet. Mark opened the side ramp and motioned them inside. Once the ramp hissed shut, the world outside felt far away. Jira sat down slowly on a crate near the wall, wincing as pain shot through her injured leg. Lena climbed into her lap and held tight. Mark grabbed a medkit and crouched beside them, opening the case with practiced hands. "I told you we can't stay here long," Jira said, voice soft but firm. "The bounty hunters are everywhere. If they track our scent—" "Let me fix your leg first," Mark interrupted gently. "Then we talk plans." Jira studied him as he cleaned her wound. Most males from her world wouldn't even touch an injured female like her, not without claiming ownership or demanding payment. But Mark did it silently, carefully, without asking anything. His hands were rough, but his touch was kind. "You're not like the others," she finally whispered. Mark glanced up. "The others? Humans. Most of your kind ignore us or pretend we don't exist. We were tools during the war, nothing more." Mark finished wrapping her leg and looked her in the eye. "I'm not here to use anyone." Jira didn't answer, but her gaze softened. Lena, sitting between them, pulled the broken wooden toy from her pocket. "He fixed this," she said, proudly holding it out to her mother. Jira touched the repaired leg of the toy with her fingers. Then she smiled, just a little. "He's full of surprises." Mark stood up. "You should rest. I'll lock the doors and scan for patrols." But Jira's hand caught his arm. "Wait, you need to understand something." He turned to her. "Our law, it's not just tradition. If they find out we stayed with you, even one night, they'll assume you've claimed us. That makes you responsible for us by oath. They'll mark you for trial if you abandon us." Mark frowned. "Even if I'm human?" "They don't care," she said. "They'll enforce it anyway." He stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. One night of kindness, and he might be bound to these two forever? Lena interrupted the silence by yawning. Her head dropped against her mother's chest. Within seconds, she was asleep. Jira stroked her daughter's hair gently. "She's been walking for days, hiding, running." "Why?" Mark asked. "What happened to your husband?" Jira didn't look up. "He died protecting humans during the Trellux siege. He was promised safety for our family. But after he fell, the promise was forgotten. Our clan rejected us. They said without a male, we brought dishonor. They stripped our names, burned our house seal." "And the guards?" "Enforcers. They round up abandoned females and orphans, sell them mostly, or send them to labor colonies. No one asks questions there." Mark's stomach turned. He sat down across from her, resting his arms on his knees. "I don't want to marry anyone," Jira said suddenly. "Not like this. I don't want to trap you." "You didn't trap me," Mark said. "Your daughter just asked for help, that's all I need." She looked at him, really looked, and her lips trembled. "You say that now, but soon it will cost you." He shrugged. "Then let it cost me." Silence fell between them again. The ship hummed softly around them. Jira pulled the thin blanket over her daughter and leaned back against the wall. "We just need 2 days. After that, a friend of my husband may come through this system. He might still owe us a debt." Mark nodded. "Then you're safe here for those 2 days. I promise." Jira stared at the ceiling, her voice low. You're strange for a human. I get that a lot. As Jira drifted off to sleep beside her daughter, Mark sat alone in the pilot chair watching the night scan. Thoughts ran wild in his mind. He hadn't planned for this. He hadn't planned for anyone. He was a mechanic, not a hero, but something. Inside him had changed the moment that little girl spoke to him in the junkyard. Are you single? Now the question echoed deeper, not as a joke, but as a challenge. Outside, the night was still, but trouble was coming. He could feel it in his bones. And yet, for now, there was peace. A strange alien mother and her brave little daughter were finally safe, at least for tonight. Morning came quietly, with the soft humming of the ship's systems and the faint orange light of the mining moon filtering through the front viewport. Mark sat in the pilot's chair, eyes heavy from no sleep. He hadn't closed his eyes once, just kept scanning for signs of danger. He didn't know what he'd gotten himself into, but the weight of it pressed heavier with every hour. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. Jira was awake. She moved slowly, her legs stiff and sore, but there was more strength in her steps now. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight. She held a warm cup Mark had left for her and looked around the ship with guarded curiosity. You stayed awake all night, she said softly. I've had worse nights, Mark replied. Jira sat across from him. She watched him closely. Why are you really helping us? Mark turned to her, voice calm. Because Lena asked me. Because you were in danger. Isn't that enough? She shook her head. Not on my world. No one does something without expecting something back. Well, he said, then maybe your world needs a few more humans. She gave him a quiet smile, but it didn't last long. I need to know something, she said. If they come, and they will, what will you do? Mark didn't answer right away. He knew the truth. If the enforcers found her on his ship, it would mean charges, maybe worse. He could lose his license, his ship, even his freedom. Yet when he looked into her eyes and thought of Lena's tiny voice asking for help, the fear didn't win. I'll protect you, he said finally. That's not a promise I make lightly. Jira sat in silence for a while, holding the warm cup close. Then she opened a small pouch at her side and took out something wrapped in old cloth. This was my husband's, she said. His bond token. She unwrapped it, a silver pendant shaped like a flame with strange alien writing carved along the edges. In our law, she continued, if you wear this token openly, it means you claim the right to protect me and my child, not as a stranger. As family. Mark stared at the pendant, then back at her. I didn't say anything about becoming family, he said carefully. Jira nodded. I know. I'm not asking for that. I only ask, if they come, wear this. They will not question you if you show the bond. But it means something to you, Mark said. Something real. She looked down. It did, once. Now it's just survival. He took the pendant from her slowly. It felt heavy in his hand, not just in weight, but in meaning. All right, he said. If it keeps you safe, I'll wear it. She breathed out, a little lighter now, and leaned back against the wall. Thank you. Just then, the ship's alert system blinked, a proximity warning. Someone was approaching, fast. Mark stood and moved to the controls. A small hovercraft was landing near the edge of the junkyard. Through the external camera, he saw two armored figures step out. Enforcers, Jira whispered, her face going pale. Mark acted quickly. He shut down all external lights and dropped the ship's thermal signature. Get Lena and stay low in the cargo bay. Don't open the door for anyone except me. Jira didn't argue. She disappeared down the steps. Mark grabbed his old tool belt and the flame pendant. He slipped it over his head and tucked it beneath his shirt. Outside, heavy boots clanked against metal as the enforcers knocked on nearby haulers scanning for life. Mark exited the ship calmly, holding a data pad, pretending to inspect engine parts. One of the enforcers spotted him. Human! The tall figure barked, his helmet visor glowing red. Seen any travelers? Female and child, silver skin? Mark shook his head. This is a junk zone. Nobody comes here except scavengers and mechanics. The enforcer stepped closer. This area is under active sweep. If you're hiding fugitives, the penalty is death. Mark lifted the data pad. All I've seen is rust and dead batteries. Want to look around? Be my guest. The second enforcer scanned the ship. Biosigns inside. Mark's heart pounded. That would be my cleaning drone, he said quickly. I let it run auto routes when I'm working. Cuts down on dust. The first enforcer stared at him. Then his eyes caught the edge of the flame pendant barely visible under Mark's shirt. He pointed. What's that? Mark pulled it out slowly and let it hang in full view. Family. Token, he said. I took in a widow and her daughter. They belong to me now. Lawfully. The enforcers exchanged a glance. One checked a device and nodded. Under protection by claim, the second one muttered. Not our concern anymore. Without another word, they turned and walked away. Mark stayed still until their hovercraft was gone. Then he exhaled slowly and went back inside. Jira and Lena were waiting. When she saw the pendant still around his neck, Jira's lips trembled. You didn't have to wear it outside, she whispered. Yes, Mark said. I did. And for the first time, Jira looked at him not with fear, but with something close to hope. The moon's wind howled as a storm approached, its sky turning black with heavy ash clouds. Mark stood near the ship's main hatch, staring at the swirling sky. The enforcers had left, but he didn't trust the quiet. Their visit had been too quick, too polite. Something felt off. He knew they'd return, with more men, with stronger orders. Inside the ship, Jira was packing what little they had. 2 spare clothes, the girl's wooden toy, and dried food Mark had brought from the supply shelf. Lena was asleep again, curled in a blanket on the floor, tired from too many nights hiding. They'll be back, Mark said as Jira approached. I know, she answered. Her voice was calm now, steadier than before. She looked different too, less broken, more focused. And this time they'll search everything. Mark nodded. I've got one plan. It's risky. She looked at him carefully. Tell me. There's a path through the ash fields, not many know it. The scanners fail out there. The storm metal in the ground jam signals. If we can cross it, we reach the old mining tunnels. My ship's backup shelter is hidden on the other side. We can wait there until your husband's friend arrives. Jira frowned. The ash fields are deadly, that's why no one goes in. I've gone through twice, Mark said. With breathing gear and a good map, we'll make it. Jira didn't hesitate. Then let's go. Mark bent down and gently picked up Lena. The girl opened her eyes sleepily. Are we flying away? No, Mark said softly. We're walking this time. Outside, the storm had thickened. Ash fell like snow, covering everything in gray dust. The landscape beyond the junkyard was empty, just cracked earth and smoking pits. Metal trees, twisted and long dead, reached toward the sky like claws. The air stung their eyes and burned. In their lungs, so Mark gave each of them a filtered breathing mask. They moved quickly, Mark leading the way, Lena held close to his chest and Jira walking just behind. The path was rough, jagged rocks, hidden holes and old mining wires cut through the ground. Ash clung to their clothes, their boots, their skin. The wind grew louder with every step. Half an hour in, Jira stumbled. Mark turned back and caught her before she fell. You okay? He asked. She nodded, breathing hard. Just the leg. It's still weak. We can stop for a minute. No. We keep going. They'll be tracking. She was right. Even if the enforcers couldn't scan them, they'd guess where they were heading. Soon, strange sounds filled the air, low hums echoing from beneath the ground. The ash fields were not just dangerous because of the wind or dust. They were haunted by old machines, forgotten drones left behind from mining days. Some still moved, driven mad by years of decay. As they passed a half-buried crawler bot, Lena whimpered. It's looking at me, she said. Mark looked at the broken drone, its red eye flickering faintly. "Just keep moving," he said, but Zira paused. "Wait, these machines, they still respond to some frequencies." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You know drone codes?" "My mate taught me," she said. "Let me try something." She crouched near the crawler, pulled a small tool from her coat and tapped a few quick signals onto a nearby metal plate. The crawler buzzed, blinked twice, then went silent. "There," she said, standing up. "Now, if the others are connected, they won't notice us." Mark stared at her, impressed. "You were trained?" Shira gave a small shrug. "I wasn't always a mother hiding in scrapyards." They kept moving. An hour passed, then 2. Just as Mark began to doubt the old map, he memorized. They reached the cliff's edge. Below, hidden under a metal slab and thick vines, was the entrance to an abandoned mine shaft. Mark shifted the cover with all his strength, revealing a steep, narrow tunnel. "We'll have to crawl in," he said. Shira nodded and helped guide. Lena through first, then she followed. Mark came last, sealing the hatch behind them. Inside it was dark and quiet. The tunnel led them into a small chamber, his emergency shelter. Old, dusty, but dry. The generator still worked. A small heater came to life, casting warm light across the room. Lena curled up in the corner again, hugging her toy. Mark handed her a soft blanket. Shira sat beside her daughter, rubbing her back gently. Then she looked at Mark. "You didn't have to come this far." "I did," he said simply. "You'd do the same for your child." She nodded slowly. "You're strange, Mark Dalen." He smiled faintly. "I get that a lot." The shelter felt safe for now, but they all knew it was only a matter of time before the world outside found them again. Still, for the first time, they weren't just running. They were surviving, together. And somewhere in the dust and ash, something new had begun to grow. Not just trust, but something deeper. The small shelter inside the mine was quiet, warm and still. For the first time in days, Shira and Lena were not running. They were not hiding in cold metal ruins or watching every shadow. They sat by the soft hum of the heater, wrapped in old blankets, breathing slowly and safely. Mark sat a little distance away, checking the scanner device he had wired to the rock wall. It was weak, but it gave some warning if anything came close. As he worked, he glanced over at the mother and daughter. Lena had fallen asleep in her mother's lap again. Her tiny hand rested on the wooden toy that Mark had fixed days ago in the junkyard. Shira gently stroked her hair, her silver fingers moving slowly, lovingly. Then, Shira looked up. Her eyes met Mark's. "She doesn't cry when you're near." Mark blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "She's only 7 cycles old," Shira said softly. "But she's seen more fear than most warriors. When her father died, she didn't speak for weeks. Then she just started pretending he would come back." She looked down. "Until now." Mark stayed quiet. He didn't know what to say to that, so he did something else. He stood, walked to his storage box, and returned with a small metal case. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "Food." Shira opened it carefully. Inside were soft biscuits, dried fruit, and a small cup of warmed synth milk. She stared at the offering like it was a treasure. "No meat?" she asked gently, testing. "I remember you said she's part vegetarian like you," Mark replied. "I listen." Shira smiled. A real quiet smile that made her seem years younger. They ate together in silence. Shira shared every bite with Lena, even the last biscuit. Mark didn't miss the way she held the crumbs in her hand for her daughter's sleep-chewing mouth. It wasn't about manners. It was about love. Later, Mark stood and walked to the side panel. He opened a compartment and pulled out a small music player. It was old, scratched, but it worked. He placed it on the ground, pushed a button, and a soft human melody began to play. Shira's head tilted. "What is that sound?" "A lullaby," Mark said. "Something my mother used to play when I couldn't sleep." Shira listened, eyes half closed. It's gentle. It sounds like wind over water. Mark nodded. It helped me feel safe as a boy. After a long moment, Zira whispered something in her own language. Words soft and full of memory. Then, without realizing, she began to hum. Her voice was deeper than the music, but it blended well. The notes carried a sadness that felt like it had waited a long time to be heard. Mark didn't speak. He just watched her, her silver face half lit by the soft light, her eyes closed, her voice rising and falling like a secret breeze. When the song ended, Zira opened her eyes and looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I forgot where I was." "Don't be," Mark said. "That was beautiful." She looked away. "On my world, we only sing for those we trust." Silence fell between them again, but this time, it was not uncomfortable. "I was raised to be strong," she said at last. "Taught never to cry, never to show pain. But when my mate died, I shattered. And no one came to help. No one except you." Mark leaned forward slightly. "I didn't do much. You gave her food," she said. "You fixed her toy. You gave me a warm place to sleep. You protected us from the law. And you didn't ask for anything back. That means everything in my world." Mark looked at her. "Is that why Lena keeps asking me to marry you?" Zira laughed softly. "Yes. To her, kindness equals love. And in our culture, love equals protection." "I don't want her to get the wrong idea," Mark said. "I'm not pretending to be her father." Zira nodded. "And yet she sleeps peacefully next to you." "That never happened before." Mark swallowed the lump in his throat. "She's a brave kid. She takes after her father," Zira said. "But sometimes, she reminds me of you." They didn't say much after that. The night grew deep and quiet. Zira laid down next to her daughter, and Mark returned to his chair. But even as they rested apart, something invisible grew between them. Not romance, not yet, but something real. In the middle of a dying moon, surrounded by ash, metal, and old sorrow, 3 broken lives had found comfort in the smallest things. Fixed toys, warm food, shared silence, and songs never meant to be heard again. And in that moment, Zira understood something she had never been told. True kindness doesn't ask, doesn't demand, doesn't even speak. It simply shows up and stays. For peace in the shelter did not last. On the 3rd morning, before the heater even warmed the cold air, the scanner lit up red. Mark leaned over it, frowning at the blinking signals. Several life forms, heavily armored, were moving quickly through the ash fields. Too direct, too fast. They weren't searching this time. They were coming straight for them. "They've found us," he said, standing quickly. Zira was already awake, eyes sharp. "How long?" "Maybe 10 minutes, 15 if the rocks slow them." She didn't panic. She stood up, lifted Lena into her arms, and held her close. "We can't run again, not through the fields. She's too weak." "I know," Mark replied. "We won't run." He turned to the back of the shelter and opened a hidden locker. Inside was a long coat with reinforced plates, a hand-signed permit scroll from the outer colonies, and a data pad with human law codes downloaded from the central hub. He had never used them before. Now he might need all of them at once. "What are you doing?" Zira asked. Mark strapped the bond token around his neck again. "I'm going to face them." Her voice was low but firm. "You do that, they'll test you. They'll make you prove the bond." He paused. "How?" "If they see doubt in you, any hesitation, they'll revoke the protection and take us away. You must act like a mate, like a guardian who'd kill to protect us." Mark stared at her, heart pounding. "You sure that's what you want?" he asked. "I don't want this life for Lena," she whispered. "And right now, you're the only man in the universe who stood with us when everyone else turned away." He looked at Lena, curled against her mother's chest, quiet, but watching. Then Mark stepped out into the wind. The Enforcer ship hovered just beyond the cliffs. 6 figures walked toward him, weapons at their sides. The lead officer wore black and gold armor, the rank of High Enforcer. His helmet retracted to show a cold face marked with tribal ink and a scar across his cheek. "You are the human mechanic," the man said. "Mark Dalen." "That's right. You are harboring fugitives of Zarnathi law, a widow and an orphan. They are not protected unless bound by blood." Mark pulled out the pendant. "I claim them. She and her child are under my bond." The enforcer narrowed his eyes. "You understand what this means under Treaty Code 7-6? "I do." The other guards began scanning the area. One held a glowing orb that floated around Mark, reading his pulse, eye movement, and temperature. "Emotion scan confirms stress but not deceit," one of them reported. The High Enforcer stepped closer. "Then let us see the child." Jira stepped forward slowly, holding Lena's hand. Her face was calm, but Mark saw her fingers trembling. Lena didn't speak. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a second token, smaller than her father's, her family token. She walked to Mark and offered it with both hands. "This is yours now," she said quietly. Mark knelt to her level. His heart ached, but he didn't show it. He took the token, pressed it to his chest, and spoke the words he had read the night before from the Zarnathi bond law. "From this moment your child walks with me. Her safety is my breath. Her fear is my fire." The orb scanned again. The enforcer's datapad blinked green. "Legal bond confirmed," one of them said. "Protection is valid." The High Enforcer stared at Mark. "You are now under oath. Any harm to them? And the law takes your life." Mark stood up. "Understood." The enforcers paused. Then they stepped back, returned to their hovercraft, and disappeared into the dark ash sky. Silence returned. Jira exhaled deeply. Her knees gave out, and she sat on the cold floor holding Lena tightly. Mark walked back to them. Jira looked up at him, her voice hoarse. "You didn't have to say the oath." Mark sat beside her. "But I meant it." Jira blinked, unsure how to respond. Then, she looked at the pendant he still wore. "You're bound to us now," she whispered. "By law." "I know," he said. "But I didn't do it because of the law." She stared at him. "I did it because no one else should ever look at that little girl and decide if she deserves to live. She deserves to grow up, laugh, be safe. And if being part of that means I stand beside you," he touched the bond token, "then so be it." For the first time, Zira's eyes filled with tears. Not from fear, not from loss, but something warmer. Something she hadn't felt since her mate died. Hope. Mark didn't move as she leaned her head against his shoulder. He just sat there, one arm around her, the other resting gently on Lena's back. They were no longer fugitives. They were something else now. They were family. The shelter felt different now, warmer, quieter. Not because the danger had passed completely, but because something deeper had settled between the three of them, something no scanner or law could measure. Mark sat at the small table with Lena, showing her how to fix a tiny light module. She watched with bright, eager eyes, copying his movements, laughing when the bulb flickered to life in her hand. Jira stood at a distance, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, her silver eyes soft as she watched them. There was no tension in her shoulders anymore, no fear behind her gaze. Only a question, one she hadn't dared to ask aloud. The next day brought a message, an encrypted transmission sent to Mark's personal comm line. Jira's breath caught when she heard the name. "It's him," she whispered. "My husband's friend. He's alive." The man, a retired Zarnati warrior named Vel Oren, sent coordinates for a safe zone in neutral space. He was willing to take Zira and Lena in, offer them shelter, even provide documents that would keep them hidden from clan justice forever. "You'll both be protected," Mark said after reading the message aloud. "It's what we hoped for." Jira nodded. Yes. But her eyes didn't match her voice. Mark noticed. What is it? She hesitated, then looked directly at him. If we go, you won't be with us, will you? Mark blinked, not ready for the question. You've done more than enough, she added quickly. We can't ask you to give up your ship, your freedom. You didn't ask, he interrupted gently. Your daughter did. Jira looked down. She's a child. She doesn't understand what a bond truly means. She understands more than most adults I've met, Mark replied. That night, after Lena had fallen asleep, Mark walked outside the shelter and stood under the stars. The wind had cleared the sky. For the first time in days, he could see the stars clearly, endless and sharp. Each one a system, a world, 1,000 lives. He had traveled alone for so long, moving from job to job, system to system, never staying, never connecting. He had thought that was safety, but now, safety felt like a small child's hand tugging his sleeve, or a silver-eyed woman humming beside a heater. He heard the soft footsteps behind him. Jira stood beside him, quiet. She'll miss you, she said. If we go. I'll miss her too, Mark replied. And me? Her voice cracked slightly. Just a little. Just enough. Mark turned to her slowly. You know the law calls me your mate now. I know, she said, but that's not why I want you to stay. He stepped closer, eyes locked with hers. And that's not why I will. Jira blinked. What are you saying? I've made my decision, he said. Not because I'm forced, not because of some alien rule or treaty, but because I care about you, both of you. I want to be in Lena's life, I want to see her grow up, and I want to be with you. She didn't speak. Her lips parted, but no words came. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. It was the wooden toy he had, fixed for Lena, now polished and whole. I was going to give this back to her tomorrow, he said. But I think it means something more now. He pressed it into Zira's hand. She gave me her token, he said. You sang in front of me. We've all given pieces of ourselves. I'm not afraid anymore. Jira looked down at the toy, then back at him. I never thought I'd say this to another man, she whispered. But I'm glad it's you. He smiled. The next day, Vel-Orin's ship landed in the quiet valley below. He was older, scarred, his eyes sharp as he scanned Mark, Zira, and Lena standing together outside the shelter. She chose well, he said to Zira after their greeting. Your mate has the fire of a protector. Mark extended his hand. You can take us wherever you think we'll be safe. Vel-Orin raised an eyebrow. Us? Jira stepped forward, her voice clear. He stays with us. Not because of law, but because he is ours. The warrior nodded once, then turned back to his ship. Then let's get your new family off this cursed moon. Inside the ship, Lena sat between them, holding both their hands. She smiled up at Mark, bright and full of joy. You're really coming with us? Mark squeezed her hand. I wouldn't stay behind for anything. Jira leaned her head against his shoulder, and as the ship lifted into the sky, away from the ash, the fear, and the broken past, they carried nothing with them but one truth. This was no longer about protection, this was love, chosen freely and forever.